I was just reminding Mark that the last time we were on stage together, he threw my papers on the floor. He told me I was too studious and that I needed to be more improvisational. So I'm going to keep my papers away from Mark. So,
and then she just asked me, do you want to know about the questions? I was like, nah, let's just wing it.
No, we have to wing it. So I've known Mark. We've known each other for a long time, probably 15 years or so. I've tried to, at least, yes, we're getting old. And I've tried to get him on stage for so many years, and so I'm so excited that he's here. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about Trump versus Clinton, maybe a little bit, maybe not. I know I already started. I told Mark that I already started with the locker room talk this morning, but we kept that to a minimum. And then we're going to talk about investing, Shark Tank investing versus Silicon Valley investing, and lessons learned, and how you become a self-made billionaire. And so, but I want to start off with entrepreneurship. And many people here probably read your book and know your stories, read your book.
It's called How to Win at the Sport of Business. It's like $10. You can afford it.
Yeah, it's a good book. And in the book and on his blog, you'll hear these stories. And Mark will talk about how when he was 12 years old, he had to work for his sneakers. Now we're talking sneakers. This is not a luxury product, right? This is something that a 12-year-old kid needs. And he had to go out and sell garbage bags to buy his sneakers. And I love that story. So I just need to know, he has three kids now. It wasn't
quite, okay. So I've been a basketball junkie my entire life, and I had a pair of tennis shoes, but I wanted like the coolest kicks, I wanted like what the cool kids were wearing. And I went to my dad, who happened to be playing poker with his buddies and probably had a lot to drink at the time. And I was 12, and I said, Dad, I want a new pair of whatever, Converses or whatever that I wanted. And he's like, Mark, you see those shoes in your feet? They look like they're working just fine. When you have a job, you can buy whatever kind of tennis shoes you want or need. Until then, those work. I'm like, when I have a job, Dad, I'm 12. And then one of his poker buddies pops up and says, I got a job for you. And I was like all ears. He goes, I got all these garbage bags I need to get rid of. And so he had boxes of these cheap garbage, really cheap garbage bags, a box of 100, sold them to me for $3. And then I literally took a sample and went door to door to door in my neighborhood in Pittsburgh and said, hi, I'm Mark. Do you use garbage bags? Would you like to buy your garbage bags for me and you never have to worry about running out again? I'll just show up every week or two and you hand me $6, I'll hand you a box of 100 garbage bags. Now, who's going to say no to that? And so I sold a lot of garbage bags, and I probably had the world's first and only garbage bag route when I was 12.
Garbage bag route. Yeah. How long did you do that for?
Not that long. I got my shoes pretty quick and I was done. Carrying on a big box of it was a lot.
That's great. That's such a great idea. Now you have 3 kids, 7, 10, and 13. So do you make them work for their clothes?
Yeah, not so much for clothes, because my wife will take them shopping for clothes. They know better than to go with me. But yeah, for anything extravagant or anything out of the ordinary, like, my oldest daughter has a phone and she wants the iPhone 7. And so there's a whole list of things she has to do in order to get there. She's not there yet. She was very upset about that last night. She told me so. But yeah, so I want them. So for my son, who's 7, in order for him to earn money to get Pokemon cards, we play math for money. So he's, so now he's up to 17 times 17, which I'm pretty proud of. But if he can answer without having to work too hard or use a piece of paper, then he gets $1 or $2. He's just now starting to figure out division a little bit. So it's $1 for math and $2 for division.
That's great. So, that's great. You want them to have that entrepreneurial spirit.
Well, I just want them to be confident and be excited about learning. Instead of just, because my 13-year-old just got Snapchat. She finally was allowed, literally, because she was like, Dad, well, she was 12. She just turned 13 a couple weeks ago. Dad, all my friends have Snapchat. I'm like, no, the terms of service here say you have to be 13. And so we literally read through the terms of service. And the good news was she didn't cheat it, right? She waited.
Yeah.
And so it made it all the more valuable, which kind of backfired on me because I think she's up, in 3 weeks, she's up to 37,000 snaps or something ridiculous.
Wow,
so, you know,
well,
all day long.
Yeah. Well, my teenager just looked at me and said, "Mom, you're on Snapchat?" Ugh.
I know. Let me just tell you, okay, I'm talking about ageism here. The next kid who walks up to me and says, "Do you know what Snapchat is?" I'm going to smack him in the head. I've been on since 2011.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, well, yes. You've been your Snapchat, Instagram,
Everything,
Facebook, Twitter,
yeah,
everywhere. And now you have your own email newsletter.
Yeah, that was because I wanted to learn MailChimp, so I set up a newsletter. Yeah.
So you started, we were talking, you started 20 or so, 25 companies. You had a bar, you had
I've had everything. I've done everything.
You taught
A disco
lessons,
yeah,
that was
dance
your
lessons,
company,
which is my favorite all-time job, going to sorority houses and getting paid $25 an hour to teach line dances and different types of dances.
So
Only sororities, not fraternities.
So how come you're not like dancing, of course, how come you're not doing Dancing with the Stars?
I did do Dancing with the
being
Stars.
like a permanent,
I
like,
did, oh yeah, no, things have worked out better for me, you know, so it's okay. No, but I did Dancing with the Stars. I got my ballroom down.
Okay, good.
I'll try anything
all right.
if it's an interesting challenge.
No, that's great. I can't believe you actually made money selling and teaching disco lessons. Did you even know how to dance, or did you just like learn it and sell it first and then learn it?
All the
figure it out
above.
later?
Yeah, all the above.
Because you have a tendency to do that. You just sort of like
Teach
put up a
myself.
shingle and just say, "I know how to do this," and then you figure it out.
Well, it
as
just
you go
depends what
along.
everybody else learns. So, you know, I taught myself to code when not a lot of people knew how to code in, you know, different database languages, scripting languages, BASIC and stuff like that back in the day. And so I could stay ahead of everybody else. And so as long as it's something where, you know, because to me, that's always been the cool part about technology. Every single second of every day, there's something new coming out. And there's the people who invented it or, you know, created it, and then there's everybody else. And I have the same ability to keep up, you know, with everybody else or get ahead of them. And if I can get ahead of them, then that's a competitive advantage for me. And so being able to take, you know, new apps, new software, new whatever, and use it to get a competitive advantage, that's been the foundation for all the companies I've started in tech.
Right, particularly Micro Solutions,
Right.
which that was the one you sold when you were in your 30s. That made you a millionaire. And then you
Right.
you started broadcast.com. You sold that in your 40s. That made you a billionaire in your 40s. So when you look back at those two out of the 25, those are the ones that you sold and you really.
Well, there's a couple others in there that I sold, but
That's
yeah,
true.
those were the big name ones.
The big
yeah.
name ones. So but when you look back, and they're also milestone ones because they made you at least hit a certain threshold economically. But when you look back and you look back at the journey, the challenges, the sweat equity that you put in, what you learned from it, what the impact it had on the people around you, which one are you more proud of and why?
I mean, I'm proud of all of them. I mean, I started Micro Solutions because I got fired from a sales job. You know, when I was working at a retail software store and I wanted to go pick up a check because it was a $15,000 check and I would have made $1,500, which would have allowed me to move out of the apartment I was living in, which was 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment and was just the nastiest place ever.
Your towels could stand
Yeah, the
by
towels
themselves,
stood by
right?
themselves, yeah. And so he said, no, I need you to open up the store. So I made the executive decision to go pick up the check thinking, okay, when I show this guy the check, he'll be like, okay, you know, all's forgiven. He fired me. And so I took that, well, actually, I didn't get that full customer, but I went and found another customer, started out of that, you know, nasty apartment and started a systems integration company called Micro Solutions. And, you know, when I first started, it was helping people configure their PCs, install them, install software, and then it evolved very quickly into connecting them together. So, you know, I'm dating myself, but we were one of the first local area networking integrators in the country, and by the time I sold it, we were one of the top 10 largest systems integrators in the country. And then I sold it, bought a lifetime pass on American Airlines, partied like a rock star for a couple years, got really good at it. But I went back to Dallas. Came out here to LA to take acting classes and just have fun, live on the beach, and went back to Dallas and had lunch with a friend, Todd Wagner, and he's like, you know, there's got to be a way for us to listen to Indiana basketball with all this internet thing going on. Do you know what the internet is? Do you know what this is about? And I'm like, I don't, you know, I've played around with it some, you know, I've downloaded Netscape. Let me see what I can do. And, I started doing research, and nobody was, back then they called it netcasting. Nobody was sending any audio or video over the internet. So I'm like, I think there's something here. Let's go and figure out how to do it. And we worked with a lot of different software companies. And, I had a network integration background at that point in time. Like I said, we were one of the largest network integrators. So we put, some software, some networks together and went out and gobbled up all the sports rights we could find and started a company first called AudioNet and then Broadcast.com, where, back in 1997 and 1998, we were getting, more than 1 million visitors and growing a day, people watching audio and listening to audio and watching video. Had an IPO. At the time, it was the biggest IPO in the history of the stock market, and then sold to Yahoo. Then the stock market tech bubble hit, and Yahoo kind of imploded. And
that's when Mark and I talked a lot, and you kept telling me we should short Yahoo.
No, I didn't say short Yahoo. I said short tech stocks.
Short tech stocks all the time. That was constant. So I'd be like covering the market, and I'd email Mark. So is the market frothy? Should I still keep telling people that it's frothy? He's like, yes, sell. But I still remember that because you were right there. You and Mark Pincus, another friend of mine. I just remember the two of you were and I guess Peter.
And so when we sold Broadcast to Yahoo, we got it all in stock.
Yeah.
And so literally at that point in time, I'd saved up from companies. I'd sold the integration company. I'd started trading stocks. I started a hedge fund based on my trade. Sold the hedge fund within months. Did really well there. But I was able to save up $25 million in those couple years in between. I took every penny I had, literally, and shorted an index that by law could have more than 5% of Yahoo, just in case the stock market crashed.
Right.
Because that bought me 6 months, at which point I could collar my Yahoo stock that I'd gotten. And so 6 months came and went. The market was still up. People were telling me I was an idiot. I just lost $25 million. But it bought me time to hedge all my Yahoo stock and put together a collar. And then within months after that, the whole thing went to hell in a handbasket. And I protected everything I had, made a little bit of money, and it's been called one of the top 10 trades of all time. So, and it wasn't like I was so brilliant about it, but it was like, how much money do I need, right? And plus, I'd been through the wars enough that the tech stocks, the internet stocks were frothy. Before that, we had seen networking stocks get frothy. Before that, we had seen software stocks get frothy. And before that, we'd seen PC stocks get frothy. And every time there was a big crater right afterwards. So I was like, okay, there was every chance. And that's what you and I would talk about back then.
Well, I want to talk about that for sure. I want to talk about asset bubbles. I want to talk about whether, which I think that prices are pretty frothy right now, particularly with the real estate. But just going back to entrepreneurship, you mentioned that gentleman, your boss who fired you at Micro.
He wasn't a gentleman at the time.
Okay, your Micro Solutions.
His name is Michael Humecki, if you ever run into him. But I don't hold grudges.
And there's another guy at Mellon Bank too that you probably don't know.
Yeah, John Whitman,
John Whitman.
So that's another story.
Clearly, these guys, so if you think about psychology, there's push and pull, these forces, right? And so these guys basically pushed you away from.
No, it wasn't so much that they pushed me one direction. I mean, the guy fired me. I guess that's the ultimate push. But I knew I was a lousy employee, right? For me, it was just a matter of time. I'd been through 3 jobs in 2 years that I either quit before I got fired or got fired from. But in all of them, I think I accomplished 2 things. I got paid to learn, and I learned so much that taught me, even though the guy fired me, I learned so much from him about what not to do. I mean, literally, that it saved me and made me a boatload of money, because if ever I caught myself doing what he did, then I knew it was wrong,
right.
Because, the guy, I met the things this guy would tell me. He would say, you want to buy your suits here. Okay, so first of all, let me just tell you this. Based off of what I was making, I bought my suits 2 for $99. I mean, the polyester, I could wipe them down. I didn't have to take them in for dry cleaning. I bought my shirts. All of them. They were either fake polos or I bought them used. Literally, I bought a place called Rethread in Dallas. I bought all my clothes used. So, and this guy is telling me okay, you got to step up your game. And if by the way you happen to wear glasses with prescriptions, right? This place called Peeps is where you should buy them because they'll make you look cool. I'm like, and he'd drive up in the nice car and he wanted to be CEO. I'd be out selling and he'd never go on sales calls. And it's just, all these things about what not to do. So, and the point being that, there's no perfect job, there's no perfect circumstance if you think you're an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur. But when you're down or you're in between, I've always taken a job because A, it pays the bills, but B, no matter whether I was working as a bartender, working in a bar, doing whatever, I always learned because it's always a business, and it helped me understand the restaurant industry, the computer industry, the service industry, whatever it may, and that gave me a great foundation for everything I did.
Well, so this guy was really helpful because it
Very
clearly
helpful.
showed you somebody you didn't want to be, but are there people who pulled you into entrepreneurship, who gave you who you aspired to be?
I don't think there's anybody I aspired to be. I looked up to Ted Turner because he was a freak, if you guys know who Ted Turner was, he started
also built a sports
TNT and TBS and CNN, and also owned the Atlanta Braves. And I read his books, and it was like, he used media and he just had fun, right? Or tried to have fun, and I thought, okay, that's a goal for me. I want to enjoy every minute of it. Even when I was down, even when I was counting, how many days of cash I have left, or, literally when I moved to Dallas, we would, take $20 basically a week for our party budgets, and we would go to bars that would have fried foods, buy one beer and all you can eat fried mushrooms or whatever. I mean, I gained 30 pounds, but I mean, that's how I lived. And so I looked up to him just because he managed to get things done and have fun doing it.
Yeah, he was a maverick,
yeah.
I'd say. So let's switch to Shark Tank. Let's start talking about investment.
Anybody watch Shark Tank?
How many people watch?
Oh, come on now. For those of you who didn't clap, Friday, ABC, 8 p.m., watch it.
I know someone here who went home last night and said, I'm going to watch a bunch of Shark Tank tonight. He's
well,
presenting
Friday night, we've got a
tonight.
really good episode.
So you have done, you've done 20 million. Well, we'll see a little bit of Shark Tank here when you judge.
Right.
Of course, we have our own set of rules.
Be afraid,
too,
be very afraid.
So, so you've invested what, 20 million in 85 deals?
Yeah, it's more than that. Well, okay, so let me give you a little background on Shark Tank. So when they walk in the door, we know nothing about it. Nothing. We know their first names. They come in, they get on the carpet, and what takes as long as 14 minutes on TV might go 20 minutes if it's a really dumbass deal to 2 hours, right? And so we'll go through and ask a lot of questions. If you make a deal, then we have the chance to do due diligence. Early days, probably 40% fell out because they were bullshitting one way or the other. Oh, my widget only costs 30 cents to make. Well, then you do the due diligence. It costs them $3 now, but if they make 7 billion of them, it's 30 cents,
Yeah.
And so, but now actually more of them fall out because we've kind of become a growth hack for a lot of companies, particularly Silicon Valley. So I'd say, 50% of the companies close. And to this point, I've closed 71 deals, and I think I'm in for like $30 million, give or take. And I've sold 4 of them, none big hits. Of those 71, I think 2 are out of business. 3 are out of business that aren't smart enough to know it.
The Walking Dead.
Yeah, 12, 15 of them are making $500,000 or more per year. A couple of those are making, millions per year.
None have returned your 30 million.
None have returned 30 million, but I mean, if I did a mark to market based off of growth and everything, I'd be way up, right? But on a cash basis, I'm still down. But
you do investments on the side. You also invest in,
sure,
in
a lot
other
of
companies. So if you look at your Shark Tank portfolio and your angel investing portfolio, which one's doing
totally
better?
different. I mean, my angel stuff does a lot better just because I invest more money to get a bigger return, right? I'll take different types of risks. Shark Tank, I do the show not because they're great investments, but I do the show because it sends the message to kids 8 to 80 that the American dream is alive and well. You can watch the show and come to realize that somebody out of Iowa or, the middle of nowhere in Texas can start a company and, turn it into something special. And I think, so many families watch the show together that it's just, particularly in this day and age when so many people are saying what's wrong with this and what's wrong with that and what's wrong with America, it just really reinforces that, somebody with an idea who's willing to, go beyond just an idea to a company phase and really work, something special can happen. And just reinforcing that is really important to me.
Yeah, no, that's nice. That's
I mean, there's, you guys talk about entrepreneurship here, and everybody's trying to learn and get better at it, and that's amazing. But, every episode reaches at least 20 million people over its lifetime, and, we're reinforcing to all those 20 million plus that the American dream is alive and well, and to me, that's important.
And everybody here knows that, because this is what we want to do. This is what we do. We're entrepreneurs, but it's different in Silicon Valley. I mean, you think you take, typically, if you're going to do a seed round or even early stage, you're taking 20%. But when I watch Shark Tank, and I think I saw some of the numbers too, I mean, sometimes, these guys you're taking 30 to 50% of their company. And that's not, what kind of message are you sending to America if they have to give 30 to 50%?
That it's better to have 10% of a watermelon than 100% of a dying grape. And so it's a little bit different perspective, obviously, particularly than Silicon Valley. And remember, there's just a small percentage of companies that are tech companies, and particularly software companies. There's only a few software, with the leverage. Okay, there's situations where you can say, we might ask for a bigger valuation or a smaller valuation, bigger equity percent than you might get here or in the Valley. But I would rather tell you that valuations in the Valley are ridiculous, and valuations in LA are, not as bad, but coming close.
Right.
If you go outside the West Coast, valuations are half, and so I talk about all the time the Silicon Valley arb. I can invest in companies in Boston, Austin, Dallas, Miami, Chicago, New York, wherever. Maybe not as much New York anymore, and get investors in the Valley and elsewhere, and get triple the valuation just because that's the market over there. And so I don't think, in terms of sending a message, everybody has to value their company, but the reality is if you're asking for money, you're asking for a reason. I always tell people sweat equity is the best equity. In this day and age, particularly with software companies, you can try to spend money all you want on growth hacks, and I want to go out there and be ubiquitous, and you have to spend a lot of money to get there, but 95% of, or if not more, 99% of those companies fail. Yeah. And so, I mean, the best companies, the best experiences I've had are where the best equity is sweat equity, where you've got a great idea, you go out, you launch it, you get some traction, you hit your KPIs, you have great cohorts. See how I'm mixing in those buzzwords. And then you have something to sell. True. Because to me it's crazy when somebody just has an idea, goes to UC Berkeley and figures they're worth $8 million.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying that sometimes it feels like...
Or Stanford, it's a toss-up. When somebody from Stanford got $8 million, somebody from Berkeley's got to get $8 million and one.
Yeah,
and then Stanford's got to jump to $8 million and two. So.
Right, but when I look at these guys, they seem demoralized because they're taking away that opportunity. I mean,
well, here's how demoralized they get. Here's how demoralized they get. And this isn't a tech example. 19-year-old woman by the name of Lanny Lazari from Pittsburgh, my hometown. It's got a company called Simple Sugars. She comes on when she's 19. She's 21 now. 6 months after the show airs, I get an email from her, and she goes, "Mark, I got a question." I'm like, "What?" She emails me back. "I've got $1 million in cash in the bank. What am I supposed to do now?" I'm like, "Smile, and let's discuss, put aside some for taxes, and let's discuss, how we can invest the rest to grow your company." When you get on Shark Tank, we've yet to see a company go backwards. Mm-hmm. It is a growth hack. It will create sales, and there's such visibility, and I think the sharks are smart, usually for the most part, and we help companies grow. Now, if you're a tech company, not some of us have those tech skills, Robert and I, and some don't, Sacco when he's on there. But again, it's a different beast. So I think it's wrong to think that we're taking too much of the company. Let me give you the flip. Let me add another component to it. The time component of Shark Tank filming is minimal, mm-hmm. right? I spend 10 days, 11 days in June, 11, 12 days in September. That's it. Go out there, do some promos, a week or so of that, 10 days of that. Spending time with the companies, helping them, 24/7. They all can email me anytime. I'm not a big phone or meetings guy, but I'm always accessible full-time via email. And if it's a real problem, I'll go visit, or I've got a staff of 15, but we're there all the time. These are needy companies. Now, when you talk about VCs and investing in the Valley or investing in a tech company, it's pretty much hands-off, maybe some connections, maybe a board meeting, right?
Yeah.
Let's sit down and talk at the board meeting. Let's get on a call if you have a problem. Let me make an introduction. It's not, we take over their accounting, which we do. It's not, okay, we'll help you with all your HR, which we do. There are just so many back office things, and then going out and, setting up, on Amazon exclusives, Amazon Pay, all these different things.
Lots of distribution.
Yeah, and just getting you access to retail, whatever it is. So there's so many things that would cost money if you were just going through a traditional VC seed angel type scenario that we preempt.
I agree with that 100%.
Well, thank you.
So you do add more value than a VC.
Thank you.
So let's talk about something less controversial. Let's talk about politics. Right. I think we all know who you're voting for.
I'm with
initials
her.
DT. But no, last year you said, or you tweeted, I would prefer to be a Republican because I want smaller government. And so Hillary, whom you endorsed, wants to expand government by, quote, making the biggest investment in American infrastructure since Eisenhower.
Well, actually, Trump said he was willing to spend more and was going to spend more.
Well, I don't know how he was going to spend more than
on
Hillary?
Infrastructure. Yeah, because he's got to be bigger
He
than
was
everything.
going to spend on infrastructure,
Right.
but I'm not quite sure. Yeah, he is. Yeah. Everything's huge. I get it. But with him, but this is bigger government, right? This is not smaller.
Yeah,
government.
look. So there's a hierarchy. There's Maslow's hierarchy, and I mispronounced, and then there's the real world 2016 hierarchy, right? And in terms of politics and voting, from my perspective, the first thing, the most expensive thing to business, the most expensive risk to business is political and social instability. Mm-hmm. And if we're not safe, if there's riots in the streets or there's social unrest in the streets, businesses can't open, you can't get to work, commerce can't happen. That's the greatest risk. To me, Trump increases that risk exponentially. Mm-hmm. The guy just doesn't, thanks. Here he is this close to being president of the United States and he can't shut up, right? And he has to say some stupid shit all the time. And put aside what he said 11, 12 years ago, that's bad enough, but just what he says now, right? There's no there in when he talks. And, he has such a lack of self-awareness and such a lack of contextual or awareness or context that it's likely he would say something offensive as president and offend, North Korea or China or Russia, and invasions happen, right? You get military instability. There's a very fragile global peace. Right. And to me, he's the greatest risk. And what's more expensive, higher taxes and bigger government or instability? Instability every time.
But when you bring in a president, you don't bring in just one person, you bring in an entire team, an entire philosophy, an entire worldview. So you're not just bringing in Trump, you're bringing in
Well, that's not true. That's not true because Trump has to make the final call, right? And so look at his track record. He's been through 3 different campaign managers, right? He's, when you look at there's been nobody, not one single person who stood up and said, boy, I've worked for Trump forever. He's been a great mentor to me. Has anybody heard of one? Boy, Donald Trump invested in my company. What a great mentor. Have you heard of one investment he's made in one entrepreneur? Not one. Boy, Donald Trump made me a shitload of money. Words no one's ever said. So when you say, well, he'll put good people around him. So that's part one. He hasn't demonstrated the ability to do that. Part two, your advisors are never...
It depends on what you think of Pence and Giuliani and Peter
Like
Thiel
I said,
and Icahn and some of these other folks.
Well, Icahn has just said he'll support him, and he said he's not,
Cuban Pickens.
When I've challenged both of them, they said they're not going to defend him. They just support him.
Right. Well, nobody can defend him. Even I'm not here to be a Trump apologist, but I am here to just, because I know how much you like.
Oh, no, look, I started off liking Trump.
Yeah.
Right? I started off supporting him. I said he was the best thing that happened to politics because he was candid and he wasn't scripted.
Yeah, okay.
But then I had to listen to what he had to say. And look, let me just say, I actually talked to him, right? And he called me on the phone. My quote's on his book. And so we would talk on the phone. We would email. Well, I don't email him. I email his assistant who prints it out. He writes on it. She scans it. She sends me the scan as an attachment. That's the efficiency we would look forward to in a Trump government.
clearly a lot of Hillary Clinton fans. But let me talk about
let me finish, right? So, and a big part of my supporting Donald at that point in time was I thought Ted Cruz was smart and dangerous. Donald's just dangerous. And so, so when he got to the Republican convention, I started asking him, like, you got to learn this stuff, right? You got to learn this. And just no interest. I mean, I sent him links to books, and I tried to, it's crazy. I mean, talk to him, but when the whole FBI Apple hacking thing was out, for San Bernardino, tried to send him stuff to explain it to him. Just no interest in learning whatsoever. And so when he asked me what happened, why did I change? I told him at some point you have to stand up and learn these policies. You have to learn. So, and how that applies to advisors. Right. If you're sitting around and you're trying to decide what Putin's going to do next, and you're trying to anticipate what's going to happen with North Korea, and what should you do here, what should you do there, you're going to have 5 different advisors potentially giving you 5 different pieces of advice. You can't make a choice and make a qualified decision if you have no idea what they're talking about. That's the problem, right? If you look at the people he trusts, he's been in business, 50 years. At some point or another. The only people he trusts around him right now are his kids. No knock against his kids, but at some point there'd be some trusted people that came in that I've got Todd Wagner, my partner from broadcast.com. I trust him with my life, right? There's guys, hopefully, and I'm not running for any office, but hopefully if I ever did, and I have no intention of, if I ever did, somebody would stand up and say,
we'll talk about that.
There's no chance, but somebody would stand up for me, right? You don't see a single person, right? I mean, there's a videotape.
I mean, they're not standing up for his words. No one can, but they stand up for what he stands for, which is the conservative. Well, he stands for jobs in America. Sure, he wants.
Who isn't for jobs in America?
Yes. Yes, but he is bringing it home in his very inarticulate way. He's trying to say that, sure, we need to be a little bit more protectionist. People aren't talking like that before he introduced a lot of these issues that are now front and center. I'm not defending him.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that he's not articulate. Nobody can defend some of his actions.
Okay, so what I suggest to everybody, I'll give him credit for being consistent, right? So before I looked at supporting Hillary, I did all the research on the emails and the foundation, all the stuff, and all of it I think is nonsense. And I also went back and I wanted to know, because Trump's been interviewed for a lot, put aside the 2005 era in his life. And I went back and found this tape from an interview he did with David Letterman in 1988. And all the topics he talked about then, immigration, trade, only back then it was Japan, and he talked about they're killing us, we would negotiate the worst trade deals ever, they bring in VCRs, and they're killing us with their VCR pricing, and they're, abusing the yen. He hasn't evolved his perspectives at all. They're exactly the same. So you can give him credit for being consistent, or you can say that he hasn't evolved, but the guy just doesn't learn. There's nothing where you say, golly, anybody is there one topic you think Trump has gotten smarter of in the 14 months since he's announced or whatever it is?
So let's, Hillary is still, leading in the polls, however, narrow. She has a narrow lead, but you talked about instability, and that really can hurt the stock market. I could tell you another thing that can really hurt the stock market, and it is the Fed. And every time the Fed eases over the last 10 or so years, the stock market just spikes higher, right? And so the one thing you have to give him credit for, and I know you've tweeted about this, that Donald Trump doesn't know a thing about the Fed, and I agree with you there. But again, he doesn't know these things, but he calls them out. And I think that the Federal Reserve...
Think about what you just said. Think about what you just said.
No,
he doesn't know them, he doesn't understand it, but he calls them out.
He doesn't know the inner workings of what the Federal Reserve. No, what he's pointing out is that we have had quantitative easing for the last 10 years. Has the Fed created an asset bubble? Do you think there's an asset bubble?
Depends which asset you're talking about. Do you think that we should look
at what the Fed's doing? Even the Prime Minister.
Look, here's what I know. Here's what I know. If you put 10 economists in a room, they're all going to disagree about what you should do.
Sure. Well, what do you think, though?
Look.
But you might run for president.
I'm not running for president. Personally, I think you leave the Fed alone. They're trying to find a reason and a way to raise interest rates because they know any tools in their toolbox that they've had, they thought they had, really hasn't worked the way they expected them to. And so they're playing big data. Look, probably everybody in this room has some viewpoint towards big data, machine learning, deep learning, AI, et cetera, right? And is trying to find ways to take huge amounts of data and use them in an intelligent way. The Fed is trying the same thing. Is there an absolute answer? No, I don't have an absolute answer, and either do they. But here's what I do know. What other economies in the world are better than ours right now? Where are people sending their money? Is there an export? Are people like, anybody here rushing to invest money outside the United States? China and Russia are passing laws and cracking down on people investing money in the United States. You know who's going to hurt the most from that? Trump. He can't sell them condos, but that's a different issue. But there's nobody, those countries are working to try to keep capital that's controlled by individuals, and particularly inside their countries. And so when you just look at the path of capital, it's all coming here. Now, we can complain that our growth isn't high enough, right? 1.5%, 2% growth. We'd all like higher, but this is the longest period of sustained growth. Every other post-recession or depression growth period has had a recession in there. So you'd go 2 steps forward, 1 step backward of various sizes.
Well, that's because we doubled our debt to get there. So we doubled our debt by $10 trillion, 100% growth.
Wait, first of all, okay. A lot of people like to quote $9 trillion, right?
No, now it's $20 trillion.
$20 trillion of
debt, not
right.
deficit.
And what's our GDP? And what is our asset base in this country?
Our GDP is probably equivalent to it, or actually less. It's
no, so if you take all the entitlement programs and everything that we possibly own, right? Right? Then yes, the amounts up here, the amount's always been bigger, about equivalent to our GDP, right? In absolute debt, right? So what's the alternative? What do you think happens if we did? What do you think would happen if we didn't spend the money?
Well, no.
Yeah, because that's the question, right? You want lower debt.
Well, I think well, that's the question.
Yeah.
Does the debt concern you?
No.
So it doesn't. So
no, because right now, look, if it was up to me look, we can argue about the Fed and QE and the value there. I don't think there's an absolute answer. That's why the Fed is struggling. But what I do know is if you give me the ability to borrow any amount at basically nothing, I can invest it and get a return.
Right, but somebody's got to pay that back.
Yeah, and I can get a return. So it's like any investment. If I invest in anybody out here, somebody's got to get paid
so
back.
You don't care about the debt. Okay, fine. So I want to go back to the sort of quantitative easing because he doesn't care about it, so we're not going to talk about it.
No, it's not that I don't care about it. I care about what happens to this country. I want to see the economy grow. I want to see more jobs. But I want to think through. I don't want just headline porn. Headline porn is $9 trillion increase in debt. Headline porn is, we have so much debt, the country's going to implode, which is nonsense, right? Now, can we just spend forever?
Well,
no. There gets the point where, but look at China.
Can we open this up?
Yes, of course we can open it up.
Awesome. All right, we got a live mic. I'd like to kick things off. This has been a really dynamic conversation. I really appreciate it. The questions from your interviewer, I think, are spot on. And I really commend your tenacity with Mark Cuban, who's a tough
get
guy
to it. Go ahead.
in the Shark Tank. Hey, Mark, you're a successful entrepreneur who's done amazing things. But you seem to lack some knowledge about the national debt.
Just ask the question. Don't try to fuck with me. Just ask the question.
No, I'm messing with you right here. I'm bringing it on. So Martin Feldstein, chairman of the Economic Council under Reagan.
I'm sorry?
Do you know who Martin Feldstein is?
Right.
Right. So in 1984 said, the biggest problem our generation will have to deal with is the national debt.
Okay.
The single most important problem. You seem to write off that issue. We've actually doubled the national debt.
Look, if you just want to quote people,
9 years.
I was very clear that you take 10 economists and put them in a room, you're going to get 10 different answers. He's an economist, correct?
He's an economist, yes.
Right, so thank you very much.
We've doubled our national debt over the last couple of years.
Do you have a question?
I do.
Okay, so ask.
You seem to have dismissed the importance of the national debt. I think that's a very important question. All right.
Okay.
Okay, let him go, guys. Don't pick on him. Come on. No, just let him go. Let him go.
So my question is, you've made a lot of personal comments about the characters involved in the election.
Yes.
Okay. You seem to have written off some very important substantive issues, beginning with the national debt. But let's
I didn't write it off. I said that what I would do is invest, and we need to get a return on that investment. And I felt like if I was making the decisions, if I qualified it, I thought I could get a return on 0% interest. That I thought that the amount of debt we have relative to the GDP and the asset base we have in this company was not out of course. I would have also gone on to say that, yeah, with entitlements that continue to grow, there's an issue there, but if we ever get a political system that can address those, then we'll be in a position to address those, because right now, nothing that either candidate is going to propose is going to change that.
Growth addresses debt.
Right, growth is going to do it. So exactly, you have the exact answer.
Which candidate do you think is going to encourage growth better?
Well, I can tell you this. Donald Trump doesn't know what he's going to do, so that's the first problem. The second problem is whatever they propose has to get passed, which is a big problem.
Growth improves stability and security, the other issues you raised earlier, right?
What's that?
Growth improves the economy, stability, security, the issues you raised earlier.
So what would you do for growth? Just cut taxes?
I think cutting the corporate tax is a huge step forward. We have
I'm for cutting corporate tax. I have no problem.
Okay.
I'm all for cutting corporate tax. I think we should be competitive with other countries. I got no problem with that.
Regulations.
What's that?
Regulations that are increasing concentration in industries, decreasing competition.
I haven't run it. Look, there's regulations.
We have a couple more questions.
We could talk about regulations all day long, right? In some cases, we need more. In some cases, we need less.
Give me a second.
Wait, let's, we have more questions here.
Okay.
Should we have more
all right,
questions?
okay, hold on.
I do have a more important question. I've been teasing Mark. I do have a more important question.
Go ahead. This is your last one. That's your last one. Go ahead.
My last question is corruption. Historic, unprecedented corruption.
You're an idiot. Okay, so let me just deal with that real fast. First of all, look, if you want to go into the whole Clinton corruption thing, let me just shut you down and give you facts. Right? I'm going to just deal with this, right? So first, before I endorsed Secretary Clinton, I did my homework. I didn't read Breitbart. I didn't read MSNBC. I didn't read the Wall Street Journal. I didn't read Newsweek. I went and read transcripts, right? I read and went actual, criminal reports. I talked to different people. I talked to people who were involved, right? So I can't really address what happened 20 years ago, but Bill Clinton isn't running.
There's an article yesterday, the vast majority of the FBI agents believe that they were recommending for indictment.
Actually, no, this was great. I really want to get some other questions.
What's your response?
I want to really get some other questions.
Go back to your job at Breitbart and we can talk after you get fired.
Okay, go ahead. Asher. We have another question.
I don't know if this is on. Are we on here? Oh, yeah,
yes.
There we go. By the way, Mark, thank you very much for taking your time.
I love this. This is fun.
Having some, the patience for dealing with that.
No, it's fine.
We appreciate it.
Look, let me just add. If you're going to be a good entrepreneur, you're going to have the courage to put something out there that other people may not agree with. When I told people we wanted to listen to Indiana basketball over the internet, they're like, "What's wrong with radio? That makes no sense to me." And so every time I put something out there, I want to be challenged. I call it checking my whole card. Because he might have just asked a question. He might have said, you know what, I actually talked to so-and-so, or I actually did research instead of just reading headlines, and I might have learned something, right? So when someone challenges my whole card...
I've got a lot of primary research.
No.
When someone challenges me, that's when an entrepreneur gets challenged, that is how you learn. That's how you make your company better. So when you see me do interviews about politics, you know where I've done most of my interviews? Fox. Because I love being challenged on it. So it allows me to get smarter, and I think it's something every entrepreneur should do.
Oh, I agree. No, I agree. Yeah, definitely. So what I want to do is get back to what we're all here for, and that's entrepreneurship. So
sure.
I want to ask you, by the way, Lashana Tov, by the way. I want to ask you, I'm an investor in a company that I think you're an investor in too, a company called Connected Signal. So I want to use that as a basis for, what do you look for in companies you invest in?
There's no one thing that I look for, right?
And if you use maybe Connected Signals as an example of why do you invest in that company, and use that as kind of the example.
There's no one thing that I look for. I mean, they have great entrepreneurs. I think it's a good idea, and if there's great people behind it, I think it's a good idea. I think it could scale to something big. Then I'm willing to take a chance. There's just no one set of rules that I follow.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Bradley Conn. I'm not an economist and I've never worked in the financial sector, but just hearing you speak moments ago about growth, I was triggered to ask how much in your research, how much value have you and do you see the community around you placing on sustainable growth rather than just trying to grow to meet targets so that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So look, there's growth where you're just buying numbers, basically. Right, so you go out there and you buy downloads if you have an app. You know, you underprice your product, your service, so you can say you have an installed base, and then you try to figure out how to make it up afterwards. I'm a far bigger fan of organic growth. You know, I get it all the time, particularly with my Shark Tank companies. Can you get us on other TV shows? Because, you know, PR is like Viagra for business, right? You know, unless you need a doctor's warning and it lasts too long, typically it gives you one big pop, and then you're back where you started. And so I always want my entrepreneurs to tell me how they're going to have organic growth and how it's going to be sustained. And trying to figure that out is critical because the money's going to, you know, it's like the food delivery companies right now, you know, Plated, you know, Blue Apron, et cetera. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to make money because their cost for customer acquisition is enormous and it's not really going down. And so, at least not enough. And so, I look for sustained growth. And something I learned from Warren Buffett. He said the number one thing he looks for is pricing power. Can you raise your prices? So, if your price is $9, can you give it to 10? And how are your customers just going to be so happy that they don't want to go anywhere else? If the answer is yes, you're doing things right. If your answer is no, then you have to really question your marketing and your approach.
Just to add another dimension to that, in terms of environment also, and just kind of the broader issues we're facing as a species, do you factor that into any of these? I mean, obviously it's business specific, so you know, it may not be so relevant in tech, but it may be in food production, for example,
no, of course,
energy production.
Everything. Look, anytime there's disruption, you know, everybody looks for disruption and everybody talks about disruption. And so when you're disrupting an industry, it'll make sense to everybody why they should use you, right? Snapchat's a good example. It didn't make sense to me the first 6 months I was using it, but then as I saw everybody now that they had smartphones and they just wanted to take pictures and it was so easy and that was a simpler way of communicating than using a keyboard, that it became obvious it was organic. And so, you know, I think it applies whether it's sustainable food because the food's better, the food's safer, people want to be healthier. There's a company I have called Alyssa's Healthy Cookies. And this guy sent me the cookie. I looked at the back at the nutritional information, and this huge cookie was 190 calories, high in fiber, low in net carbs, which was important to me. The problem was the cookie crumbled, right? So you couldn't really distribute it. So we reformulated it. We came up with this new approach to maintaining moisture in the cookie. So now these cookies are smaller, but a pack of 8 is only 350 calories. I eat them every day for breakfast. Seriously, I've lost 15 plus pounds because I don't have these sweet cravings anymore, and it's high, et cetera, et cetera. And now we got it. We started, this was 3 years ago, I think, started with 40,000 in sales when he reached out to me. We'll do 10 million in sales. Not a single penny of advertising. We get it into the grocery stores. By the time they're there 6 months, they can't keep them in stock because people are going in and buying 5, 6, 7 packages at a time. So they have them. That's organic growth, where it was disruptive. We found an approach to keeping moisture in that made them taste great and kept all the calories down and kept the fiber up, et cetera. When you have something that's truly disruptive, you don't have to spend every penny you have marketing it. People tend to find it and tell people about it, and it grows organically. And so, yeah, I think that's important.
I'm going to try to get,
Thanks.
okay. Thanks. I'm going to try to get through these questions, guys.
Okay.
I think people want to hear them. So let's try to get through these quickly.
Hi. Hello.
Go ahead.
Hey, Mark. My name is Kara Coton. I'm an entrepreneur. And my question is on pricing. So I have a new product. It's called QuadraClicks RBT. Stands for Right Above Touch. Sounds like a rabbit. It's actually a mouse, but it looks like a rabbit, so we call it Rabbit. I have It's actually on the demo table right in the front.
I'm sure it is.
Right. So we were debating on the pricing point when we launched it because it's such a good product. It's actually better than anything that's out there now. We've tested it.
I've never heard an entrepreneur say my product sucks. So.
Well, Sam will be
You
honest.
price it as high as you can, right? Unless, look, sometimes there's a compelling reason where you just need to get it out as widely as possible for competitive reasons. But physical products, right? You want to price it as high as you can and maximize your margins and make as much money as you can as quickly as you can. Software products are different just because your marginal cost to deliver one more isn't much. And so, you've got to look at the marketplace, but for physical products, like I mentioned, the cookies, right? We didn't try to underprice it to say, okay, let's get as many people as we can trying them. We're like, how much will people pay? We tested different price points, and we picked the highest point that they would pay. And
Let me give you an actual number.
Okay, I'll go out there and I'll see if I have time. I'll go out there because we
Let's
can't get into individual products.
Yeah, let's just get to this. There's 3 more questions behind you. I really just want to get through them really quickly, and that's it. But Mark will.
I'll try to get out there and check it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I have an entertainment news blog for young readers 12 to 22, Teens Media, and I'm wondering if you would grant me an interview via email giving my young readers career and life advice.
I didn't hear all of that, but sure.
Thank you, Bambi, for the
Should be my
opportunity. Thank you, Mark, for being here today. My name's Holly. I'm the CEO of Healthy Heady Lifestyle. We've been called the Mary Kay of Mary J. I know that cannabis is not an area that you have been looking at. However, do you see the potential? I know that you said it was a little bit flooded, but really want your thoughts and opinions as we are looking in clearly here in November for legalization on the adult use
Yeah,
side.
I'm all for it, right? I have no problem with legalization. I'd be a hypocrite if I did. So yeah, as far as a business, every stoner ever born thinks it's their salvation to start a company around getting high in some way, shape, or form. So there's just so many people. Now there are better businesses, but there's just so much competition. And look, on one hand, all the legal uncertainty, all the financial uncertainty, all the banking uncertainty creates opportunity. But on the other hand, there are so many people just going at it, and so many things can happen. I would tell you to look at what happened with FanDuel and DraftKings and Daily Fantasy. Right? They're just crushing it, and then one little tweak to law or somebody, the guy who was telling me about all the right-wing stuff or the Republican stuff, he gets elected, and all of a sudden, marijuana is the worst thing to happen, and it's a great gateway drug to supporting Donald Trump.
Yeah, back where we started. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Good luck.
Good morning, Mark. My name is Roger Wu from Ice for Lives, and my question is regarding the startup valuation versus the product launch. I know the valuation for a startup could be all over the place, and my product itself, we launched the product 4 months ago, and before we launched, we got advices saying that we should just hold off until we can raise additional money, because after you launch,
Oh boy.
the traction, depends on how quickly we can get a traction, it could actually hurt the valuations.
Right.
So I'm not sure what's your take on this.
I tell people to wait as long as possible, because if you're really, really, really good, you won't have to raise money, right? You can use sweat equity, and the longer you can go without raising money, the better. The more of your company you'll own. If you can go without ever raising money, you know what ends up happening? You own 100%. And it means you don't have to raise money, and it means business is good. So, I think a lot of people fall into the trap that raising money is an accomplishment. Mm-hmm. It's not an accomplishment. Raising money is an admission that you need money, right? And that's never a good starting point. Now, look, I invest in a lot of companies, that are startups. I typically don't do Series A or later. I do angel and seed. Uh-huh. I'm always looking. But when people ask me, those same companies ask me for advice, it's like, as long as you can go without raising money, the better the valuation you'll get. And maybe you'll crush it, and you won't have to raise money, and you'll be far better off financially, and you won't have to worry about people like me looking over your shoulder.
Okay. Next one. We'll go over super fast.
Hi, my name is Rocio Lopez, and I have a small kids theater company called Kids LA. So I have a very artsy background. I'm an educator. And I do have, I've designed a food app, but because I'm not in the business world, I'm more of like nonprofit educator type, and I don't have a tech background. My insecurity is that I feel very uninvestable. Is that a word?
Well, that's because you are.
But
I don't mean that.
No,
I don't mean to be
I
mean.
know I am. What advice would you give to people that have a lot of potential, that are smart, but yeah, are not really in that world?
Be amazing at your design business. Be phenomenal at your design business. The most successful entrepreneurs find something that they're good at and become great at it. Then you'll know, right? The problem is we all get stale. No matter what you do, no matter what business you're in, no matter who you work for, even if it's your own company, you get stale, right? You get those lull points where you're like, oh shit, what did I do? You know, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Sound familiar? Yes. Right? Where you're down on yourself and it's like, oh shit, right? And then you just have to find your own way to re-energize. You know, you have to find a way. So what happens, you know, for all of us, you're doing design work and you've got all these other ideas because something is not fulfilling you in your design work. Find a way to be fulfilled there, or find a spot in the design world where you can be great. Because no one ever hates something they're great at. You always find a way to love it, right? And then for entrepreneurs who have existing companies, we have a tendency to try to drown an opportunity. Oh, I'm killing it here, but I must be smart. So I'm gonna have another idea, right? Because if I'm smart already, this will be even smarter, it's even bigger, because we don't want to do the work on our first idea that we thought was so smart, right? We want to, because it's always a grind. When people ask me, you know, what's my greatest strength? Well, one of my greatest strengths is I grind like a motherfucker, right? When people are slowing down, I've always been able to, you know, go play basketball, go work out, go get drunk, whatever it is, and then just re-energize and get back at it. And so that's a challenge everybody with ambition goes through. And so it's not a knock on you, but rather than trying to be investable, go find something to be great at it, or something you really love doing, and then the rest works itself out.
Okay,
Thank you, Mark Cuban.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark. My name's Costin. I'm a CEO of a company called AnyMeeting. And this sort of ties into the last piece of advice you just gave, but what do you look for in maybe first-time entrepreneurs? What is that spark that you think makes an entrepreneur scalable, that they can build great things, that you continue to
I look for
invest in them?
Just what I said. I look for what are they great at? What is their core competency? How are they differentiated? Another Warren Buffett saying, first there's the innovators, then there's the imitators, then there's the idiots. Which one are you? And that's what I try to figure out. Are you an innovator? Sometimes imitators make money, but it's tougher. And then by the time you're the 10,000th person doing the Uber for something, right, it's already too late. And so that's what I tend to look for. And then, you know, I ask myself whether or not this person can execute it. And then going back to a couple of previous questions, if you have some type of track record, and you're not just buying your growth, but you're demonstrating the ability to organically grow, and the demand's there, and you have an ability to execute, and you work hard at it, and you're smart at figuring things out. And when I say smart, it doesn't matter where you went to school, it doesn't matter what your GPA was. It's more about, you know, what are you learning as things come at you? Do you check your whole card? Do you continuously get smarter at your business? You know, everybody starts out equal in every industry for the most part. You know, if I sat you in a room with your competition, who knows more about your business and your industry? You or them. That's what I look for.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
This was great, but I get the last word and the last question. This is the last question. So Shark Tank, your Shark Tank co-host Chris Sacca said you'd become president last month. Ralph Nader said that you would run in 2020.
He said that?
Colbert, yes, he did.
Oh, if Ralph Nader says it, it must be true.
He said Stephen Colbert, also you said you'd consider presidency, but you want to spend time with your kids. But so what would tip your decision over to say, okay, I'm going to run in 2020?
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
You think I'd put myself and my family through this shit show? There's just no chance. There's just
Who would
no
want
chance.
Mark to run in 2020?
What about that one guy? If he says yes.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Bambi.
Thank you.